It was nowhere else in the city was there a request that we not move on this. That was specifically, not even in the law department, it was in the government affairs section of the law department. And I do apologize for the delay in getting to it. But again, because it was a 2016 issue, there were other things that had higher priority. And I will leave the rest of it to Mr. Toaz.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Toaz, can you introduce yourself for the record and Mr. Barrow?
Toaz, Law Department.
Tom Barrow, President of Citizens for Detroit's Future, the initiators of this particular.
Thank you, sir. Attorney, you want to begin, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
As I believe was circulated around before this meeting,
Let me stop first. Mr. Barrow, you have the opinion of the law department?
I have not seen any documents from the law department other than Mr. Member Cushingberry moments ago shared with me a document which I only could peruse very quickly, very briefly. So I have no idea.
She was making a copy.
That should maybe be the opinion we have from the law
Yeah.
department. And I guess we said electronically also. Right, okay.
And she's making a copy for you now, Tom. I gave it to you to read so you would be prepared for that.
So, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I thought I made enough copies for Mr.
I was saying electronically, yes,
I
sir.
was going to go ahead and Mr. Barrow have a copy for review. In summary, since the last time we spoke, we wanted to get a full legal analysis of the initiative that was presented by the Citizens for Detroit's Future, and also not just look at the time constraints and time periods, but also the substance of the initiative, and offer whatever recommendation we could provide. Upon reviewing it, we did note that procedurally, the deadline for City Council to act upon this had passed some time ago. That was what we discussed previously, but that it is in your responsibility to move the issue to the Election Commission for their review of its legal status. In our preliminary review, we did see some legal concerns that we will address with the Election Commission. That being said, it is certainly up to their independent review prior to any official decision on the initiative or referendum as whether or not they will be able to make it to the ballot. To summarize, because it is a long opinion, it was our opinion that there were some deficiencies in the current initiative that could be improved by a parallel ordinance, and the parallel ordinance would actually operate to do many of the same functions as the initiative, and also would provide Citizens for Detroit Future and the citizens of Detroit the opportunity for all the benefits of the initiative prior to the next election. So what I brought to the table today is a draft ordinance, and this is based entirely upon the initiative and upon Mr. Barrow and the Citizens for Detroit's Future's fine work, and just fits in with what we believe would be the priorities of City Council and the city as it pertains to tabulator tapes. I don't want to go into it too depth because I know that members haven't had a chance to review it, but basically this ordinance would require that every time a tabulator tape was printed, either for malfunction or at the close of the election, that a second tape be printed, identical on the same device, and that the name of the person who was responsible for printing it be affixed to it, the number of the memory card where it came from be affixed to it, the number of the seal that the ballot box has be affixed to it, and that it be posted for public inspection in a public place that have all safeguards in place so that it cannot be tampered with. The additional aspect that we changed was up for your review certainly that these tabulator tapes be printed at regular intervals throughout the election day, regardless of malfunction of the tabulating equipment, just so that the record is made of the results. We asked for every 4 hours. The state election law does not preclude this, but it does make sure that we ensure the sanctity of and secrecy of each vote. So we couldn't print tabulated tapes in a way that would allow someone to determine the last voter, what they may or may not have voted, but so long as we have safeguards in place, this would be possible. But like I said, this is a draft ordinance, it's for your consideration and review, and it's a parallel track to the initiative, as we are not yet certain as where it will go. If this passes, the initiative may or may not still end up on the election, but this would offer substantial benefits in the interim period.
Any questions for
Mr.
Toaz?
Mr. Does this essentially incorporate in what they propose?
In essence, it does incorporate a majority of what they propose. The only substantial differences are in the penalties. In the initiative itself, there is a $5,000 penalty for any alleged tampering or any possible issue with the posting of the tabulator tapes. And it is our opinion that ordinance violation we could not sustain that penalty. We are only allowed to, under the charter, we're only allowed to do a maximum of $500 in municipal ordinance violations and 90-day misdemeanor term.
Okay, so we couldn't have a fine that high because the charter prohibits it.
Yes, Mr.
So that's the major difference.
That and the additional safeguards for the every 4-hour posting, which we haven't had an opportunity to discuss in depth with Citizens for Detroit's Future, but it was our understanding that would be additional safeguards that would be done.
So it would still be posted at the end at that site, but in addition to that, it'd be posted every 4 hours.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a better one. So, do we still have to send this over now to the Elections Commission if we decided to take it up as an ordinance as opposed to letting it go to the ballot?
Through the chair, yes, you would, because it has already passed the time period, the 60-day time period. And with that being said, even if it were to go on the election, if this ordinance were to be passed, it would take effect prior to that order.
Yeah, I was gonna say it would take effect prior. So that would be better because then we wouldn't have to worry about the vote. It would already be city law.
So the ordinance has to go to the election commission or the original language that Mr. Barrow presented, and they would determine that language is sufficient, or both.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. This ordinance would operate as any other city ordinance and could be passed as soon as that was given public hearing. The initiative must go through the election commission and be considered for the death.
So we kind of dual track.
Yes,
All right, Member Ayers, any questions?
I do want to go back to this last point because I want to make this crystal clear. So maybe it's just former teacher here. All right. So we pass this here today, and it goes to formal, and we pass it there. At the same time, it has to go to the election commission.
I apologize. This ordinance would not have to go to the election commission. However, the Citizens for Detroit's Future initiative would to be considered to be placed on the ballot. Since this would not be placed on the ballot, it would simply just be passed as a regular ordinance. It would not go to the election commission.
Okay. Make sure it's clear. Y'all clear? Everybody clear? Okay. And at the same time, I do want to thank everybody for their hard work on this. Everybody involved, law department, Citizens for Detroit's Future. As a person that has to deal with ballot things next year, I'm with this 100%. I know what it's like to stand out there and want to know what's happening. So I appreciate your hard work and your dedication to this initiative. So.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just one final thing. I want to elaborate on my appreciation for Mr. Barrow and Citizens for Detroit's Future's input as well. They were instrumental in this process, and it wouldn't have been brought to our attention without them. And I think this is an important issue that we're glad was brought to the forefront. Hopefully we can resolve quickly and do what's best for the voters.
Mr. Barrow, hold on a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had prepared remarks, but I guess I will not be able to read them because I see documents that I was unaware of. These documents, of course, should have been provided to me previously. However, notwithstanding, Mr. Chairman, our organization would not be amenable to this document that's being proposed by Mr. Toaz. This is not what at my first look and what I've been able to see is not consistent with what we were seeking to achieve by advancing this ordinance. Changes have been made which should have been brought before, way before now. We had been previously under the impression that they were reacting to Mr. Cushingberry's request for a legal opinion, which I knew there never existed a formal request for a written opinion. It was the oral one that Mr. Toaz gave. Now I learned today it was based upon some request from Council President Jones on July 9th, of which I was unaware. But notwithstanding, Mr. Chairman, this changes completely what was proposed by the citizens when they signed that initiative. The only thing that precludes this from going forward potentially, and of course we did not make it a crime in our ordinance deliberately. That is some self-serving language to turn it into a crime that we never intended to make it a crime. But the only piece in here that could potentially be of a debate, which the court may have to decide, does it change it substantially, is the maximum amount of the penalty. We would advance, and we've been under the impression that our ordinance was going to be brought back to this committee and that it would be acted upon. Now I see a completely, entirely, totally different document. What almost looks like it's taken from the state of Michigan election law and it's inserted into the section of the city of Detroit for elections, where none of this existed previously. So, Mr. Chairman, I am certainly amenable to meeting with Mr. Toaz, but I think this chair needs to make it clear they have to meet, not just from time. I can't get return phone calls for days and days and days. I cannot get physical face-to-face meetings. This is being orchestrated, and it's being made to look as if this committee is holding things up. It's being made to look as if somehow or another we're not being responsive, when I can tell in this room you are being responsive. But in my opinion, Mr. Chairman, and I mean this with as much respect as I can say it, a tail is wagging the dog, metaphorically. And I believe that this committee needs to take our initiative. It needs to be considered. If that piece needs to be changed, we can change so that the maximum penalty doesn't be, but I'm not intending to want to turn it into a crime. I don't want something to follow somebody for their life. That was never the intent. So I had a whole set of prepared remarks, Mr. Chairman, and this ordinance that we gave to you was for section 15-3-1, and I think that if it is put into place as was the intent, I think that it will achieve what Member Ayers is referring to, and I think that it will result in a positive change for the people of the city of Detroit.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow, and I agree with you when you say we have been responsive. Know that we are getting documents right as you are getting them, the opinion from the law department dated September 28th. And then the draft we just got today. So you're getting them when we got them. And it's just a draft. It's just a draft. We're not going to approve it today. Next week it's a draft. So we have the prerogative to bring it back, add language, subtract language, and then set a public hearing for it to be approved. What I mentioned earlier, two separate tracks. There's two separate tracks. The language you all gave has to first go through the election commission, and they approve. Am I right, Mr. Toaz?
Yes, Mr.
They approve that language first. Then it comes to us. So we have two things going at the same time. If your language goes forward from the election commission, it still would not be approved until 2016, as I stated in previous meetings. And orders that we're doing right now can be approved immediately as we go through the draft and as we may change the things in the ordinance. As far as the timeline, there was a lot of miscommunication in this timeline. We'll go to it very quickly. The election commission approved or should have sent you a letter, I think you were CC'd on letter, Mr. Barrow, that they received the language, I think around May 28th. This council, an email finally went out to the law department on July the 7th, I believe. We didn't get it for referral to July 14th. And the 15th, Coach Cushingberry chaired the meeting, and that's when he asked for an opinion, and Madam President asked for opinion. So even if we had moved on it as expeditiously as we could, we probably would not have made the July 27th deadline, the 60 days from May 28th, because the election commission had not approved your language yet. And as I've been saying all along, this body wants to approve an ordinance, and it will go quicker if we approve it versus the language having to be approved by the public. And I say that because the earliest it could be on is 2006, I believe November 2016, which wouldn't take effect to 2017 if it's approved by the people. This can take effect in 16 if we approve it right now, which I think the body wants to do. So this is just a draft right now. I do think that you deserve a meeting with the law department. That's at least they can do. And then we'll work and see if we want to change some things. We'll come back and give language if we need to add on the track, and they'll bring forth a draft, and then we will set a public hearing for the final approval of this ordinance here. And I think for the most part, we changed just a dollar figure and the criminal aspect on the penalty piece. And everything that you all wanted, I think, is in there as far as tabulation so that people can see when the votes are given. One of the changes Toya spoke on is if we have a downtime at a precinct and only one person has come in and we put that tabulation on the door where we're going to post it, it is interfering with that person's right to privacy of vote. If we have a large group of people, we don't know who they voted for. So this is just a draft. We're not approving it today. We want to work with you and those who are here with you to make sure that that we have a good ordinance that will stand up to any legal challenges. And I think that's where we are today. And hopefully, you know, as you said yourself, you know we're working with you. We try to work with you, and we are going to continue to work with you and make sure this gets passed very soon. Let me stop with Mr. Barrow, and then I'll just speak. Let me get to Member Ayers first, and I'll let you go.
Certainly.
Member Ayers.
So, Member Spivey pretty much tackled everything that I wanted to say, because I definitely want to stress that we all got this at the same time. The other thing that I am going to request, though, is that the law department make a statement, because Attorney Toaz has been working on this, and I don't want it to be perceived that he is the reason that you didn't get a call back or you didn't get a meeting, because I want his supervisors to speak to you about that. I want to make this really clear, because I don't want his character to be flawed, because that's not how he handles his business. So for the law department, could you please make a statement to Mr. Barrow and explain how this goes and why Mr. Toaz was not available to return his phone calls and why you all have not set up a meeting?
Through the chair, to Member Ayers, to respond to the question. When we started on the trajectory that was discussed last week, this is a 2016 issue, other things had taken priority. Those things were already on Mr. Toaz's and my mutual supervisor's desk. And those were things that needed to be pushed aside so that then he could review Mr. Toaz's work. I would remind you, Mr. Toaz is a very diligent attorney. He's a very honest person. I believe he's full of integrity. He's a brand new attorney. And so the work that he does